Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode from Your Own Pathway Leadership and Mental Wellbeing in the Workplace. For those who don't know me, my name is Paia. I'm a trained psychotherapist turned empowerment life coach in organizational leadership, where I bring my expertise, my knowledge, and my skills to empower all of you to forge your own path and to own it. Today's episode is very real, and I for some reason I kind of hesitated about doing this because it's real, and yet I don't think it's going to be popular. And the whole point of Your Own Pathway is discussing things that are tough, that may be hard to hear, that is real, and yet people may not be willing to acknowledge it because it doesn't impact everybody, but it impacts certain people. And today's episode is all about how returning to the office is really destroying women's mental health and their career path. And Your Own Pathway, Leadership and Mental Wellbeing, is all about talking about topics that, again, are related to mental health and leadership. So I actually found several really recent resources related to this topic, and that's why I wanted to do these episodes. So let's get right into it. How returning to the office, or RTO, is destroying women's careers and mental health. And let's begin by showing you all a quick clip here from CBS Morning. So bear with me for a second here. Okay, hope you all can see this.
Now to a concerning trend in the labor force. The exodus of women in the workplace is rising at an alarming rate. Take a look at data from the most recent jobs report. It shows 212,000 women aged 20 and over have left the workforce since the start of this year, while men of the same age have added 44,000 workers. Alana Samuels is a senior correspondent for Time who is writing about this, and she joins us now with more. Good morning, Alana. So why are so many women leaving the workplace?
Right. So we saw during the pandemic a lot of women actually entering the workforce. And now we're seeing a lot of strict return to office policies. And a lot of families are deciding they just can't pull that off. The other thing that's going on is daycare is getting really difficult because of the end of some pandemic subsidies. And so a lot of families are looking around and saying, I can't afford this. And one of the parents is going to have to drop out, and it's often the woman.
I have always heard, my friends with children complain and gasp at the cost of childcare. Can you just help me understand how much that does cost? Because there are some long-term impacts to women with young children leaving the workforce.
Right. So in a lot of states, I think it's about 33 states, it's actually more than college tuition. It really ranges. I think Washington, D.C., it's about $18,000 a year for two children. As I said, there used to be pandemic subsidies, and those would have actually continued under the Build Back Better Act, but that did not pass. And so it's getting really expensive. And at the same time, you have childcare workers on, Medicaid or food stamps. So it's getting really expensive for families, and there's just not really a solution on the horizon.
And it's alarming to some too, because we're now seeing increased gender disparities in the workforce. And this report comes out as the president's trying to combat a declining birth rate in the US. So how do these issues correlate?
Right. So I think a lot of women are having to decide over their careers or having children. Some might decide to drop out of the workforce and have children. And some might decide, what, I want to put my career first, or my family can't afford to survive on one income. One interesting thing is they actually looked at the pandemic childcare subsidies, and they actually earned some money back because women were entering the workforce, and that was coming back to the government in the form of taxes. So it's not great for our economy for a lot of people, especially women, to drop out of the workforce. That means families have less income to spend. And so, rather than encouraging families to expand while people can pursue these careers, these return to office and end of childcare subsidy policies are really doing the opposite.
It's a fascinating data point and issue happening for so many people. Folks should read your Time article. It's really interesting. Alana Samuels, thanks for joining us this morning. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, so as you can see on that quick clip, it talked about reasons why women are dropping out of the workforce. And of course, they talked about the return to office, and they also talked about how the high cost of childcare is driving a lot of families to make a hard decision. Like, do we, you heard what they said that in some states, childcare costs more than fucking college tuition. More than college tuition. And when you are left with those choices, you make choices that are hard and you put your career on hold, especially if you are in a heterosexual cis marriage. And so I will put that in the description box also. And I'm actually going to add um, another clip from CBS Morning in which they had more details, and they actually interviewed the same women in different clips, and she had a lot of details and a lot of data. So I'm going to include that in the description box also. And so, in one of the clips that I am going to add in the description box, they actually talked more about this. And get ready for this. Since January of this year, January 2025, for every man who entered the workforce, 4 women left. That's right. You heard that right. 4 women left. And it's just not numbers, it's a huge warning. And so, how does this impact our, economy? How does this impact women, leadership, mental health, mental well-being? It has everything to do with that. And that's why I am discussing this on today's episode today. And I want to say that even though those clips focused on women with children, I want to say that it impacts a lot of women who are often caregivers, and it also impacts women of color. Again, those two topics did not get discussed in the clips. However, it is important to acknowledge that the return to office impacts women who are child free, because often women are still the caregivers of their parents. So 44% of men got jobs this year, and 212,000 women stopped working or looking for work. So, post pandemic wise, work from home saved careers for many women, but return to office is really reversing all of this. Again, you heard me talk about this. You heard the clip about how childcare costs far now exceed in state college tuition, and how policy shifts favor men, especially in January 2025 when this presidency took over. And we're getting real. We're going to say how it is, how this presidency took over, and how they are trying to increase the fertility rate, and yet they're not offering any type of resources to make women want to have more children. So, and how does the policy shift of returning to office hurt women and actually help men? Is because more in office time means more visibility, which means more promotions. So return to office isn't neutral. It's honestly, it's a career destroyer for women. Okay. And the return to office mandates had really reignited commuting stress, rigid schedules, and loss of flexibility that everybody loves so much during the pandemic. And what this does is it pushes women into burnout faster than before. Women who are watching this, how many of you remember life when it was like 2018, 2019, before all the pandemic and doing everything? And then when the pandemic hit, we were allowed to like work from home, and you're just like, wow, this is like so much better for me. Like, I have time to do this. I have time to do that. I don't have to rush out. I don't have to rush home. I don't have to like rush home and cook dinner. I don't have to rush home and help the kids with their homework and take them. Da, 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 da. It's just like, wow, this is so nice. And what used to be able to be managed through flexibility and autonomy is now replaced with exhaustion and dread. And so, how is mental stress and burnout surging in women? There is an increase of anxiety and feeling overwhelmed. As I was saying all those things, I felt anxiety and I felt a lot of overwhelming for women who are doing everything. The sudden shift strips away control over time and energy, which leaves many women feeling powerless and trapped. And this isn't just about showing up to an office, it's about having your daily rhythm dictated, often at the cost of sleep, exercise, and family balance. What also happens is the creativity and productivity decline. When you're in a rush, when you are stuck in traffic, when you're doing things where it's quite honestly unnecessary, when your autonomy is removed, so is innovation and creativity. Women lose the bandwidth that remote work once freed up by trading focus and flow for constant fatigue and hyper vigilance. Yes, I've talked to so many women in therapy about this, how they are just hyper, trading focus and stress for constant fatigue, constant tiring, because when you have to go back to the office, you have to get up, you have to get ready, you have to cook breakfast, you have to do all these things that just take extra time. And when you have the ability to work from home, you have extra time to do all the things that are important or give you time and energy back. And I know the clip did not talk about women of color, but I'm going to talk about women of color, okay? There is double the burden for women of color. And beyond the stress, beyond the rigid schedules, women of color often face added layers of microaggressions, racial bias, and the mental load of code switching to fit into the office culture, which again erodes their psychological safety. What also happens is there is invisible emotional toll for women. And this means that there is constant prove your value, especially in person, which leaves women second guessing themselves and increases their imposter syndrome. And this fuels long term mental health struggles. Return to office is not just a work policy, it's a mental health hazard. It's a silent attack on resilience, creativity, and very well-being and the very well-being of women, and especially women of color. And at what cost? Not just to individuals, but to the future of inclusive leadership. And I know that a lot of big companies have gotten rid and have rid of their DEI. And this is for companies that are still embracing DEI. This is what you can do to help women and women of color. So, thus far, I've really focused on women with children. And I want to say women without children are also impacted by the RTO, yes, right? RTO, RTO policies also. And this is why, because it has consequences on career and leadership. And why is that? Why is it that women without children are impacted also? And remember, I said that a lot of women are still the major or the ones that do all the caregiving, especially if you have elderly parents or a part of that sandwich generation. And as someone who's in the 40s, luckily my parents are still very able, but Some parents are not as able as my parents. And so a lot of people, and especially a lot of women, are part of that sandwich generation where they are caregiving not only for their children, but they are also caregiving for their parents. And this, of course, has a huge impact on their career and leadership trajectory. So, how are women without children even impacted in all of this? And so, promotion is often measured by presence, not performance. And so, RTO, culture rewards, share time. And what this means is it often means that people are rewarded by who's seen at their desk over actual results and impact. So, women who may need flexibility are often penalized, while men are disproportionately rewarded for just showing up. All right. There's also visibility bias, and office politics thrives on visibility. Men who have fewer caregiving responsibilities often capitalize on casual hallway conversations and after hour events, and women can't always access those opportunities, which again, with men, it gives them an unfair advantage in promotions and assignments. Notice that all of the big corporations that want RTO, they're all men. And I am willing to guarantee you all these men have a wife at home who is who is taking care of everything. So they get to focus and they get to demand return to the office because they have someone to take care of everything. So they don't have to worry about anything because they have a wife at home who is thinking about everything and who is taking care of everything so that he does not have to think about it. Okay. Another thing about this is it stalls leadership pipelines. Women are already underrepresented in leadership. What RTO does is it unfortunately accelerates the problem by narrowing down who gets tapped for mentorship, sponsorship, and roles. Now, there's a myth of face time equals leadership potential, which often keeps women stuck in middle management. And I'm saying this again, I'll say it again. Women of color face steeper barriers. Women of color not only navigate systematic biases, but are often excluded from the informal networks where decisions are made. So, being forced back in the office into these environments means facing microaggressions while also being left out of the opportunities that build power and influence. Lastly, there is the erosion of trust and retention. So, many companies that are demanding the return to office claim that, oh, return to office drives collaboration. But in reality, what it is actually doing is it pushes women, especially high performers, to quietly disengage or leave for organizations that value results over outdated presence and metrics. And I have worked with plenty of women where this was something that we were working through, where they were debating, saying, Paya, do I leave? Do I go? I like this job, but it's not working for my personal life anymore because I have responsibilities. And so it's like, okay, what is most important to you? And they decided that their family or whatever their hobbies or whatever it is most important to them meant that they would be willing to leave a company for another company that offered more flexibility, R2O, and even hybrid. But a lot of them were looking for fully remote opportunities. So, yeah, do what is best for you. And again, I was talking about women of color and how return to office really impacts women of color. And so, women of color often bear the heaviest burden of all of this. And I'm going to have an article here that demonstrates why. So here's a quick snippet of an article that talk about women of color. And this article is from Forbes. Is RTO hurting women? Here's how entrepreneurship can help. So this article was actually written this year, February 20th, 2025. And it talked about return to the office mandates, but also especially here. Let me show y'all. Share screen. I hope you guys can't hear that. Somebody is doing something outside. So, okay. Let's show this. Okay. I hope y'all can see this. If not, I will also put this in the description box. Okay. So, here it says women, especially women of color, have expressed that a flexible work environment and remote work setting has allowed them to avoid microaggressions, mainly when 7.9% of Asian, Black, and I think that's 7.9 Black and Latinx workers have reported that they have to guard or hide their authentic selves at work. Additionally, remote settings have gave them the freedom to deal with family responsibilities such as childcare, which is an essential source of financial stress for some parents. And it kind of talks more about the pandemic and how women lost a lot more jobs during the pandemic around caregiving responsibilities, which led to many entrepreneurship out of financial necessity or the need for flexibility. So I can totally understand this. I too own my own business because of everything that they talked about. Luckily, I am child free, so I don't have children. However, if anything were to happen to the kids, my nieces and nephews, I'm actually on their call list to um, be their emergency contact. So, again, how is this impacting women of color with their return to office? And again, we talked about the reduced visibility and the real consequences of what happens. So, for women of color who are already underrepresented in leadership pipelines, being overlooked in meetings, sidelined in projects, or excluded from informal networks slows down their promotions and oftentimes derails advancement even further. We talked about this. The magazine, the article from Forbes talk about the microaggressions along with the compounded stress that they face. And being forced back into physical spaces often means for women of color facing biases, microaggressions head on. From having, again, expertise questions to being talked over in meetings, what remote work has done is it has shielded and protected them from all of these. And again, I've worked with a few women of color who were in male dominated workspaces and talked about this consistently where they were consistently questioned about their decisions, their abilities, their skills, and even when their male counterpart, who was often white, had less experience than they did not get questioned, they did not get the same treatment, and um it was like, no, I didn't get that. No, you did. It's like, yeah, I did. It's like, no, I didn't get any of that. And so remote work has really protected women of color from these microaggressions and from being questioned about their expertise. Another thing, of course, is the systematic biases has intensified. Okay. So office culture often defaults to amplifying voices that look and sound like the dominant majority. And we all know who the dominant majority is. For women of color, this means that their ideas are less likely to be heard, their leadership potential is less likely to be recognized, and their contributions are likely to be erased. And family and community trade offs. So, women of color are disproportionately carrying caregiving responsibilities, not only for children, but for often for extended families also. So, what happens is return to office strips away flexibility, forcing impossible choices, career or family, and in many cases, sacrificing both. And what does this do for women of color and their mental health? What this does is there's often, who's ever watching this, if you're a woman or a woman of color, especially if you're a woman of color, a lot of times we are the only ones in that space. I worked where I was the only person in the whole organization that was a person of color and woman of color, but a person of color. And when you're the only person of color and everybody else looks the same, and when it comes to you, it's like, oh, wow, I'm the only one with like really dark hair here. And so, what this does to a lot of us is there's this psychological load of being, ugh, I'm the only one again, or one of the very few, which makes you the token. And so, when you're the token, for some reason, a lot of people like to assign you certain attributes of being part of that token group. And in predominantly white office spaces, this is often magnified when autonomy is lost. And so there is constant when you're that person, you're in constant vigilance and you're like code switching. You're making sure that you can relate to your coworkers. You make sure that they can get your jokes, that you laugh at their jokes, because if not, somebody could be offended. And so it's exhausting because you're battling the bias train consistently. And this often leads to burnout and mental health struggles. And so for me, because I work and I live in Minnesota in the Twin Cities area, which is very predominantly white, I worked with a lot of people of color and women of color who told me, well, that was one of their like mental health struggles was I'm so exhausted of code switching. I have to fit in the mode and I'm often isolated because I don't fit into their narrative. I don't get their jokes. I don't go to happy hour with them. And I'm in the office, so I feel this isolation. And so working remotely actually protected them from all of this. So again, return to the office policies are not neutral. They reinforce inequity. And again, a lot of big companies got rid of their DEI. So they are the return to offices like disproportionately harm women of color, their careers, compromise their mental health, and block their leadership opportunities, which is framed as, oh, it's business as usual. In reality, it's a direct assault on equity and inclusion. So what are some things that you can do? What you can do is you can try to negotiate a flexible arrangement. You know, if you maybe you don't have to accept like whole return to office 5 days a week. Maybe you can push for hybrid models or compressed work weeks or staggered hours. Okay, like flex work. Ask every chip away at outdated systems and set a precedent for others. Maybe you're the one that can change. Maybe you're the one that asks and say, you know what? Okay, let's do this. Next thing you can do is document results. And this is beyond just the office hours. Like, keep a record of your wins. Like, what is it? What are you doing? Is it the client impacts, the revenue growth? Is it innovation? And or is it even the leadership? So when promotions reviews come up, evidence speaks louder than, oh, the FaceTime. So keep a documentation of everything that you do to show evidence. You can also expand beyond the office walls. And so you can do this by building mentor and having sponsorship networks outside of your company. You can also seek allies and network with industry groups and other women who may open connections for you. There's women's leadership groups and communities where your value is recognized and amplified. And most importantly, I know this is hard. I know this is easier said than done, but prioritize your mental health. And burnout is not a badge of honor, it's a career destroyer. So you must protect your rest, your boundaries, and it's okay to say no. No is a complete sentence. And thriving leaders know that sustainability is a must and it is a strategy. Lastly, collective power wins. Support other women, especially women of color. Share your opportunities, share anything that you know of, call out bias when you see it, and amplify each other's voices. When women rise together, systems are forced to shift. So, I know this was a lot. I know this was a lot. And it's hard. And if you feel that you've done everything that was mentioned and you're not getting what you need or what you want or need, it is okay to walk away. It is okay to walk away. It is okay to choose yourself, choose your family, and especially choose you. You don't have to shrink to fit into their boxes because you get to define leadership and mental well being on your terms. Okay. And that is all I have for today's episode. And I know that there were a lot of overwhelming parts for return to office. And if you are watching this and you have been impacted by return to office policies, please share in the comments how this impacted your career, your leadership path, or was this what you needed to really forge your own path and own it as a woman? Because your story matters. Your story matters to help empower other women to make the best decisions for themselves and their family, but especially for themselves. And this lets other women know that they are not alone. So, if you are ready to lead differently, protect your well being, and build power on your own terms, hit the subscribe button for insights on leadership, resilience, and forging your own path. So, again, I just want to thank everybody for watching this episode. And if you are interested in doing or having a Power My Life coaching or interested in organizational leadership consultant, I do offer a free 30-minute consultation for anybody who is interested in working with me. And that is in the description box with my website. So that is all I have for today. I hope you all take care of yourself and have a wonderful day and week. Bye.